Hi everyone, it's Professor Logue. I hope you're having a nice fall break. This week we'll be talking about the Asteraceae tribes, Astereae, and Senecioneae. You can find the pages for these plants you need to know in your North American Wildlands book on page 246, page 286, and page 290. So first we're going to talk about the Senecioneae tribe, which is the biggest tribe in the Asteraceae family with over 150 genres, that's plural for genus, and over 3,000 species, and about 1/3 of those species are within the specific genus Senecio. It's a very diverse tribe, and it has annuals, it has minute creeping alpine plants, perennial herbs, shrubs, climbers, succulents, trees, and semi-aquatic plants. And they're also very common plants that you might be familiar with, like ragworts and senecio or groundsels, like the one above me. Specifically, we'll be going over Senecio de Glaciae and Tetradimia canescens. So first up, we have threadleaf groundsel, also known as Senecio de Glaciae. It's now been renamed as Senecio flaccidus. Oftentimes, we're renaming plants that have epithets named after people. And so now this is also known as Senecio flaccidus. So threadleaf groundsel, or Senecio flaccidus, is a perennial native species. In terms of its growth, it is a warm seasoned subshrub that gets to about 2 meters tall. The woody stems arise from a woody caudex or a taproot, and this kind of like large mass that you can kind of see above ground as well. It grows erect to ascending and often is few branched and is herbaceous. It flowers from April to November and it reproduces primarily from seeds. So, Senecio flaccidus or threadleaf groundsel has inflorescence heads that are arranged in corums, as you can see in this nice figure I've placed for you. Corums essentially have these alternate placed stalks that are proportionally longer further down the stem and shorter as they go up the stem. And with a corum, the youngest flowers are typically in the center and the oldest flowers are on the outsides. Um, and these corums are campanulate in outline, which means they are bell-shaped, essentially, the overall flower inflorescence arrangement. The clusters of lowering branches are often aggregated to form large, showy inflorescences, kind of like you see in the image above me. And the flowers themselves have heads that radiate um, and ray flowers that are pistillate, and the limbs themselves are yellow, so they're yellow. The disc flowers are perfect and numerous, and the corollas are yellowish. And the involucral bracts are linear and subtended by well-developed bracteoles, which are essentially these little modified bracts on the undersides of the involucral. The fruits themselves are achenes, so those are the dry fruits that are narrowly cylindrical, ribbed, and canescent. And the pappus, it's a pappus-producing species with numerous white capillary bristles. Pappus, if you don't remember, is essentially those kind of like fluffy things that help seeds disperse and fly away. And so these ones specifically are numerous and they are bristly for the species. And here's a close-up side view of Senecio flaccidus. So you can see the involucral here, and then you can see those modified little bracts below the involucral, also known as the bracteoles. Vegetatively speaking, Senecio flaccidus or threadleaf groundsel have leaves that are alternate, which sometimes also have fascicles, which again, if you don't remember what a fascicle is, it means there's a bunch of small leaves coming out of this one singular spot. Many of the leaves are deeply pinnated. That means it's pinnifid, and then those leaves themselves are also pinnifid. The blades and divisions are linear to linear filiform, so needle or thread-like. The margins are entire or revolute, which means they again don't have those little margins or serrations. And oftentimes it can be rolled under at the margins, kind of giving it a more rolled look. And it is also densely lineate to tomentose, so it kind of has this soft, woolly feel to it. The stems are woody and gray and somewhat tomentose themselves. And above ground, it is often herbaceous, and the foliage is often greenish white and also tomentose and somewhat fuzzy, a very short fuzz. So threadleaf groundsel, or Senecio douglasii, also known as Senecio flaccidus, historically was used by Navajo people, and they used the whole plant to make tea that essentially helped with voice and ensuring kind of good voice coming out for ceremonial songs. Other Native Americans use this species for medicinal purposes. In terms of forage, it's pretty worthless for cattle, and sheep and goats may lightly browse it. In terms of livestock losses, it's also poisonous to cattle and horses, and sometimes to sheep to a lesser extent, and that's because it contains several alkaloids. The poisons can also accumulate in animals. In terms of habitat, it occurs in plains, mesas, sandy washes, gravelly streambeds, open slopes, and grasslands. So really open, disturbed habitats, and are most abundant in well-drained sandy or rocky soils. Next up, we have Tetradimia canescens, also known as gray horsebush. So gray horsebush, or Tetradimia canescens, is a perennial native species, which is also a warm season shrub that can grow up to 1 meter tall. It's highly branched and grows in a spreading to ascending style, and it flowers from May to September and reproduces primarily from seeds. The inflorescences themselves are compact with terminal heads in cymes, and you can kind of see what a cyme is in the diagram I have up there for you. The flower heads themselves are discoid, and the molecular bracts below the flower heads are tomentose. So again, this kind of short, soft, fuzzy feel that you can really clearly see in this image here. The disc flowers, there are 4 disc flowers per head, and the corollas themselves are funnel formed. They are bright yellow to cream colored, and the fruits are also akene with 5 ribs, which are and have a densely silky feel to them. And it has pappus, which again are these kind of like hairy appendage or these fluffy appendages, and they are white bristles that come up and basically disperse those seeds with wind or animals. Gray horsebush brush, or Tetradimia canescens, is poor to worthless for cattle, sheep, goats, and big game, and is only consumed when there's no other forage available. So basically, when they're starving. Livestock loss. This is often an issue because it can sometimes cause livestock losses, especially with sheep, where it can cause photosensitization, where they become sensitive to light, and they can also get big head or swell head from some of these symptoms as well. It has a lot of different alkaloids, which can cause liver damage and can cause death in sheep. In terms of habitats, it occurs in barren plains, foothills, and deserts, and is mostly abundant on sandy or rocky soils. Next up, we're going to talk about the Asterae tribe, which is the second largest tribe in the Asteraceae family. There's 170 genres in the Asterae tribe with over 2,800 species, and it's a very diverse tribe with annuals, biennials, perennials, subshrubs, shrubs, and trees, and it has a single common North American ancestor from which it diversified. There are very many common plants that you might be familiar with, like broomweed, asters, coyote brush, um, sunflowers, grindelia, like this gum plant up there, solidago, and so on. And sunflowers are really well known for this. There's also daisies are also well known Asterae tribe plants. So from this tribe, you're going to need to know rubber rabbit brush or Chrysothamnus nauseasis. So Chrysothamnus nauseosus, or rubber rabbit brush, is a perennial native plant, and it grows also as a warm season shrub up to 2 meters tall. It often has a rounded crown, as you can kind of see here, that is created from several erect stems from the base. And oftentimes it's very highly branched, and it usually flowers from June to September. It reproduces primarily from seeds, but also can resprout from the base. And it recovers well from fire using these basal sprouts. In terms of the inflorescences, they are often organized in heads in terminal racemes, and collectively the inflorescences are rounded, and the inflorescences often persist well into the next year. The flowers themselves are perfect with discoid heads, and the involucres are longer and thinner than the flowers themselves. Oftentimes the flowers are acute, glabrous, and the margins are ciliate. And the disc flowers, there are 5 disc flowers per flower, and the corollas are yellowish green and often glabrous, which again means smooth, no hair. The fruits are achene again. These dry fruits are linear and pubescent, or less often glabrous, so slightly hairy to non-hairy. And it also has dull white papices that help disperse the seeds. Chrysothamnus nauseosus, rubber rabbit brush, has leaves that are alternate and simple, and the blades are often linear to filiform. The leaves themselves are subglabrous to villose, which means they are mostly not hairy, but they can be a little bit hairy. And they're sessile, which means they're not connected by a petiole. They're directly attached to the stem of the plant, as you can see here. The stems have twigs that are erect, flexible, and yellowish green with a dense felt-like tomentum, or a tomentose and hairy feel to it. The trunk and older twigs have a grayish brown color and often have small fissures or cracks in the bark. The bark is fibrous and somewhat shreddy, and the entire plant has a somewhat nauseating odor, which is where it gets its epithet from. Historically speaking, some Native Americans made chewing gum from pulverized bark and wood, and they also make tea, cough syrup, yellow dye, and used those cough syrups and teas for chest pains. The Hopis stripped the bark off of branches and used branches for basket weaving. So, Chrysothamnus nauseosus, or rubber rabbit brush, is essentially worthless forage for livestock, but can make okay bear forage for deer on winter ranges. Dense patches of Chrysothamnus nauseosus often indicates poor range management, as a somewhat of an indicator species, and oftentimes or occasionally it can also report it to be poisonous. Um, it typically occurs in dry plains, hillsides, roadsides, ravine walls, and sandy or clay soils, or kind of those kind of disturbed and dry habitats. And with that, here's a nice photo of rubber rabbit brush, Chrysothamnus nauseosus, and I hope you have a great rest of your week and you enjoy your fall break and you're able to get a little bit of time off.